In this series, my team of experts and I will walk you through every step of the surrogacy journey, from your first application all the way through birth and recovery. Over the past 5 years, we've helped hundreds of women through their own surrogacy journeys, and countless intended parents reach their dream of parenthood. Surrogacy is my life's passion. It's one of the most selfless and life-changing gifts a woman can offer another family. But it's also complex and emotional. That's why we've created this series, to educate, empower, and help you feel confident in each phase of the journey here at Alcea. Whether this is your first journey or not, there's so much to learn, and we're here to support you every step of the way. This video covers medical screening. So congratulations, you're matched, and now we are moving on to medical screening. So the first step of medical screening is actually internal and administrative. We're gonna work to onboard both you and your intended parents personally, and we're gonna make sure that your escrow is open so that there is money available to you for medical screening. Once your intended parents have completed their rules of engagement, met their case manager, you've met your case manager, it's time for official medical clearance. And Christina's gonna tell us a little bit more about the medical clearance process.
Hey everyone, my name is Christina Bramante and I am one of the nurses on staff with Alcea. Medical clearance is one of the first exciting steps for you as a potential surrogate. You've been medically approved by a clinic. The clinic could be anywhere around the country. We do tend to work with a few certain clinics with Alcea. However, you could be the first person to go to this clinic. You could be one of the first few that go to a certain clinic. It's important to know though that you could be anywhere around the country depending on where your intended parents pick their clinic where their embryos are created at.
We try really hard to make this experience as easy as possible for you. So we do work with a travel concierge that's available 24/7. They're gonna help you book your flights. They're gonna help you make sure that you've got acceptable and safe hotel accommodations, that you have directions to and from the clinic. We even go so far as to pre-book your Ubers from the airport to the hotel so that you don't have to take any guesswork, and we want this to be as smooth and easy as possible for you. I know there's a lot of apprehension. Because medical screening has to happen during a certain point in your cycle, it doesn't always align perfectly with your life. You have to be flexible, and that's part of being a surrogate. And so even though it might be a little bit more convenient to come on the 20th, if the clinic tells you that you've got to be there on the 14th because that's the day of the cycle that the test is going to be the most effective, your life will have to be arranged to be there on the 14th. And I think it's a really good time to remember, I know Christine and I will both agree, something that kind of softens the inconvenience of medical screening is this is when you're going to start to see your first bonus and your first financial compensation for surrogacy. So upon completion of your medical screening, agnostic of whether or not you pass or fail that clearance, you'll get your medical screening bonus. In addition, while you're traveling, all of your needs are taken care of.
What makes Alcea's process better than other agencies is the fact that we have everything covered for you ahead of time. We really do have a penniless process. You will not be asked to put a credit card down at the hotel you're staying at. You do not need to pay for your Ubers ahead of time. Everything will be covered for you. And if you run into any problems, we have a whole team set aside just for you to make sure that we can help whatever issues you may face.
We even provide you with a prepaid cash card for your daily per diems so that if it's a time when, paying and then get reimbursed later, like most agencies do it, if that's difficult for you, you don't have to worry about it.
For some of you, it might be your first time traveling, or it might be, within the first few times you've traveled, or your first time on a plane. It could be a little bit, scary or unnerving, but we want you to know that we are all here for you. We will make things go as smoothly as possible. If you do happen to be coming to New York City, we have a lot of team members that actually live within New York City and state, so we'd be happy to meet you as well. And you can even go out for some coffee or something.
Yeah, we go to coffee. Sometimes we'll meet you at the medical screening appointment if that makes you more comfortable. We're here to be your advocate. That is our job. And if making travel more comfortable and putting you at ease is what you need, that's what we're going to do for you.
So with the clinic itself, you're going to have a point of contact, possibly a nurse who will be going back and forth with you to get you prepared for your medical screening date. In addition, you have the clinic contact with Alcea.
So we created this clinic coordination team that is comprised of not only registered nurses, but people who have worked in the IVF clinic space for years beforehand doing these kind of cycle coordinations. And they are a single point of contact to help manage the relationship between us and the clinic. And that way the clinic knows who to communicate any and all information to. They're going to know that the clinical coordination team is the person that they can let know any kind of results, anything that you would need to know. But the clinic coordination team will be very heavy-handed in both the medical screening process all the way through the time that you are released to your OB for regular pregnancy. So although your case manager continues to always be your safe space and your primary point of contact, during this particular phase of the process, that clinic coordinator from our team will work with the clinic coordinator from the clinic, and everyone will work together to make sure that you've got all of the information. But just know that there'll be multiple people that could potentially be communicating information. And if you ever have questions or get confused, reach out to your case manager. They're in the middle of it all, they're in the thick of it, and they're gonna be able to help you navigate this easily. Sometimes your partner or spouse, if applicable, are required to come. Other times they're not. So your clinic will usually reach out, do a phone assessment, gather some demographics, and let you know specific next steps. Once you've arrived at medical screening, Christina, what happens? Talk us through a little bit about the day of medical screening.
So you're going to have to go to medical screening during a certain time of your cycle. Sometimes the clinic will actually ask you to be on birth control pills leading up to it. Other times you won't be on them. If you are on the pills, you can actually be seen a little bit easier because you can go at any point during the month. However, most clinics do not want you on birth control pills, so it's expected that you would be seen on day 6 to day 12 of your cycle. It's really important to be seen during that time because you want your lining of your uterus to be shed, and they want to measure it and check your entire uterus to make sure that there's no problems in there that need to be taken care of ahead of time. They want the most optimal conditions for transfer. So you'll be seen during day 6 to 12, most likely, of your cycle. The contact at the clinic will be in touch with you to let you know the steps ahead of time, what they need from you. So when you arrive to the clinic, they're going to do your vital signs. They'll take your blood pressure. They'll take a bunch of blood. So you need to be prepared, drink a lot of water that day, keep hydrated. You're gonna have about, it could be like 16 vials of blood taken.
Oftentimes they're also gonna use that for drug testing, nicotine testing. And FYI, a lot of this blood is mandatory from the FDA. So just like that clinic is testing the embryos to make sure that they are safe and free from any kind of infectious disease that can be passed to you as the carrier, they want to make sure that there is nothing that you can pass to the embryo and also make sure there isn't any kind of incompatibility.
The ultrasound for this type of procedure is actually an internal probe. So during early pregnancy, you might have had an internal probe going into your vagina to check on the embryo or the baby or the fetus early on. They're going to use the same type of probe that goes into your vagina, and they're going to check your uterus, your whole entire lining. What's going to happen is they take a little fluid, a little saline, and they're going to inject it into your uterus to blow it up just a little bit. You might feel some pressure, it might just feel a little uncomfortable, but it really shouldn't hurt. And when they do that, they're just able to have a little bit clearer of a picture of what they're looking at. So sometimes we'll see if they have a little fibroid that needs to be removed. There could be just sometimes a little anomaly that needs to be fixed prior to a transfer. Because again, you want the most perfect scenario for this embryo to be able to eventually implant into your uterus. So that's what they're looking for, is to make sure that everything looks ideal in there.
And one thing I want to add is I think a lot of potential surrogates get quite concerned if they hear the word polyp or fibroid. Those are not necessarily declination type issues. A lot of people have fibroids naturally, a lot of people have polyps naturally, and they get pregnant with those fibroids and polyps. They don't even know that they have them. But because we have the luxury of information, clinics are always trying to create the most ideal scenarios. And so it could very well be they'll say everything looks great, except we need to have that polyp removed. So sometime between the meeting of that medical clearance and legal clearance, they'll schedule you locally to have that polyp removed, double check that things look fine, and then you can go ahead and move forward. So just remember, medical clearance is medical. It's clinical in nature. You might hear terms you're unfamiliar with. It might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but all in, you're meeting the team of people that are going to help you and your intended parents become this expanded family. And so it's a day for you to get to know the process, to get to know the people you'll be working with, and just really to make sure that it's really safe for you to be a surrogate. Obviously, in your pre-screening process with Alcea, you will have done a psychological evaluation. You will also have done a personality assessment inventory test. Sometimes clinics repeat those. So it's possible that in addition to the physical exam that you get, which will be blood work, ultrasound, and just kind of a basic physical, blood pressure, etc., some of the tests that you have already undergone to be prepared at Alcea will be repeated at certain clinics. And so you just got to repeat them and you got to do it again. But ultimately, you're typically at the clinic anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. It's an all-day affair. After your ultrasound, they'll give you a few instructions. You can rest and relax, and you typically head home the same day as your medical clearance.
Correct.
Or medical screening appointment, I should say.
It's actually also very important to note that there are BMI restrictions as well. So you want to make sure that your BMI is within the criteria of each clinic. Each clinic does have a separate criteria. However, it's typically no more than around 32. Some clinics will let you be a little bit higher, but be prepared to know that you shouldn't really have a BMI above 32. And that doesn't mean that you won't eventually be able to become a surrogate if you did happen to gain some weight and need to lose it again. So you just have to be able to, be within that criteria. And the blood work that you will have done, your partner, like I said, will need blood work as well, but it won't be nearly the amount that you will need to have done. So just to keep that in mind as well, they won't need as much blood work.
So it's probably going to be a process that you're not used to. It's also a little bit invasive. I always like to pre-warn surrogates that they're going to talk to you about any prior drug and alcohol use. If there was ever any kind of drug or alcohol use in your records, someone from the clinic is going to talk to you about that. They might talk to you about sexual partners. They might talk to you about previous STIs or any type of sexually transmitted diseases that you have experienced in the past. These things can be dangerous not only for you, but for any pregnancy, let alone a surrogacy pregnancy. So I really encourage you, just like your openness and transparency in the pre-screening process, that you walk into the clinic knowing that this is all in good faith. It's all for us to work to the same goal, and that's for your intended parents to expand your family. And sometimes that means it's uncomfortable for us. That's sometimes just part of signing up to be a surrogate. But one thing you can remember is no matter whether or not you pass or fail medical screening, you do get your medical screening bonus. So you're going to be compensated for the time, the wear and tear on your body, the intrusion, because we want to know that we value you, even in the event that there's something about your body, your anatomy, your blood work that means you can't move forward in the process. You don't walk away empty-handed.
If you made it that far to medical screening, chances are you probably are going to pass. It really would take something a little bit more, significant to not let you pass. If you did have a history of STIs, the clinic ideally knows about them already. You've been treated.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. So
at Alcea, only about 8% of people don't pass medical screening. Across the industry, it's 25 to 35%. But since we do such a great job of pre-screening people, 8% is about our average. In fact, so far in 2025, we've only had 2 people fail medical screening. So once you've made it to that step, the chances of you moving forward successfully are quite high. But all in all, your medical screening is going to be about a 48-hour process. You'll fly up the day before, you'll spend the day at the clinic, you'll fly home, and then you'll be getting those results in 2 to 4 weeks.
So you just need to be a little bit patient. And in the meantime, if there is something that needs to be done, have a little polyp removed, a fibroid removed, something along those lines, that could be scheduled during that time, typically with your own OB. If you do have problems scheduling with your own OB, we could try and help you out and maybe get you back to the clinic to have that procedure done as well.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is it's not just polyps and fibroids. Sometimes there are other type of concerns that pop up in labs, like maybe you are CMV positive and your intended parents are not. And so you'll need to see a special infectious disease doctor. There are other things that happen during this medical screening process that are case by case. And those are not declinations. These are not things that mean you can't be a surrogate. They are just things that could delay the process. And I know a lot of surrogates are so, as to be expected, excited and ready to move to the next step. But it's just really critical to be patient and understand that everything that's being done in this phase of the process is so very important to make sure that the embryo that will be transferred into your uterus is not only safe to grow, but that you will stay safe during pregnancy.
Correct. And another thing that we tend to see that's a possibility that could happen is the clinic might ask you to start a medication you've never been on. For example, your thyroid. Some people have thyroid levels that are a little bit too high or too low, and they're asked to start a medication just to get them within an acceptable range for the clinic. And again, maybe in your everyday life it's not a concern, but for surrogacy it would be. so it's typical that a clinic might actually ask you to start on the medication as well.
So when you finally get that medical clearance, you're ready to go, you know that it's going to be a safe process and that you're going to be well taken care of by an IVF clinic team that you know and that you now have familiarity with. The biggest roadblocks and challenges during medical screening, first and foremost, is exactly what you said, the hurry up and wait. You know, you're matched, which has been like, that's what you were having all of this screening. That was like the culminating event. You're ready to just move forward. And so the hurrying up and wait, you know, you're often working with clinics that have thousands of other cycling people. And so waiting for results, waiting for communication can often be frustrating. I think this is also a time when you're beginning to introduce surrogacy to your external life. And so sometimes you're beginning to answer questions that you might not have been prepared to answer because, well, why are you traveling? What do you mean you're being a surrogate? And so this is when it begins to feel real, I think, for some people, and I believe that's a challenge. And I think the third thing that I definitely experienced, and I hear quite frequently from our current surrogates, is what if they find something medically wrong that I didn't know about? And it's not that I was ever elusive or tried to intentionally hide something, but what if they do a blood work and find out that there is something that not only excludes me from surrogacy, but also excludes me from other things that I do in my life, or, you know, presents something that is an issue or a health concern that I never knew was a health concern, because these are really invasive tests that oftentimes a normal type, you know, regular checkup you're not getting, FDA labs, those types of things. And then I think finally, it's just really about disappointing your intended parents. So if there is something, you know, knowing that they've paid for you to get there, there's all this emotional capital spent, you want things so badly to go perfectly, and this is so out of control. You have no say over so much of what happens. And so I think this is the realization of, oh my gosh, I've signed up for something that completely involves my body, that I ultimately have no control over. And that can be overwhelming emotionally, because now there is a counterpart. It's not just you applying to be a surrogate, you're now helping a family. So every decision and everything that happens transcends to another person. It affects someone else. And that's a lot of pressure.
I personally feel this is one of the most exciting times, one of the most exciting steps of the entire surrogacy process. It's such a huge milestone, and meeting your actual care team is so cool.
All right, so to sum this up, you have onboarded with the agency, we've pre-funded the escrow, you've traveled to your IVF clinic for medical screening day, and you've been issued medical clearance. Congratulations, your case manager is gonna let you know that you're ready to move on to the next step, which is legal. Thanks so much for watching, and please consider subscribing. In the next video, we'll break down the legal side of your journey, what your contract includes, and how things change from state to state.